Hello, and welcome to Life Diaries, a space where the pages of life open up, one story at a time. These are tales written by experience, spoken from the heart. Take a moment for yourself, and let's begin. Mary hurried to work. Today, a scheduled medical examination was planned. She had to see several specialists before her shift began. The main thing was to finish on time, otherwise she would have to stay late. Mary worked in a hospital as a nurse. She loved her job. What weighed on her was the constantly changing duty schedule. Often she expressed dissatisfaction when she was put on overtime shifts. In response, she was usually told, "Well, why are you complaining? You're the only one of us without children, and the extra money won't hurt you. And we all have children, husbands." "I have a husband too," Mary retorted, not hiding her irritation. However, her husband, Rob, was not at all bothered by his wife's evening and night shifts. "Mary, don't worry about me. Surely I can warm up my own dinner. Or do I need a nanny to put me to bed? After all, I'm not a child anymore." So Mary took night and 24-hour shifts more often than others. Today, the young woman managed to see almost all the doctors before the start of her workday. Only one remained, the gynecologist. Mary was already getting dressed, preparing to leave the office, when she heard the doctor's words. "Development is normal. I think there's no cause for concern. I just advise you to register as soon as possible. Time has already been lost. You're not the youngest age to be taking risks." Mary froze. She didn't understand what the doctor was talking about. "What do you mean? What development? Development of what? Do I have problems? Am I sick? Why do I need to register?" Mary asked anxiously, addressing the doctor. The gynecologist smiled. "My dear, pregnancy is not an illness. Can you call it a problem? And you need to register so the doctor can monitor you. You're already 35, which is quite old for a first birth. I'll write you a certificate. Take it to your local doctor." "I'm pregnant?" Mary whispered, her eyes wide. The doctor began to show impatience. "And you didn't know? Look, woman, I have many other patients. I've explained everything to you. Now you know what to do. And ask all further questions to your doctor. Goodbye." Mary mechanically took the certificate, left the office, and shuffled down the corridor. Thoughts whirled in her head. Was she pregnant? It was unbelievable. They had long given up hope. It hadn't worked for so long. And now this news had knocked her off balance. Yes, she had noticed that her work uniform had become a little tight. But she hadn't paid attention to it, blaming it all on an increased appetite. She'd gained a little weight, it happens. All that was understandable. But why was she eating so much? Was it really because of pregnancy? And she had completely forgotten about those days. When were they last? She couldn't remember. God, she was pregnant. She needed to be sure. Mary hurried to the nurse's station. Her friend Annie was already there, sitting on the couch, engrossed in her phone. "Oh, Mary, you're back. What's wrong with you? You look pale. Did something happen?" Annie asked, looking up from the screen. Mary silently shook her head, but then asked, "Annie, by any chance do you have a pregnancy test?" Annie was known in the hospital for her lightheartedness. She had affairs not only outside the clinic, but also within its walls. Feelings sometimes overtook her at the most inconvenient moments, and the girl didn't always bother with contraception. Therefore, pregnancy tests were always at hand. "Of course I do. You even ask," Annie replied briskly and rummaged in her locker. She pulled out a couple of tests and handed them to Mary. "You know how to use them, I hope," Annie joked. But Mary wasn't in the mood for jokes. With a serious face, she took both tests, grabbed an empty sample jar from the table, and headed to the restroom. A few minutes later, standing in the restroom, Mary held 2 tests in her hands. Both showed a positive result. She shifted her gaze from one to the other. 2 lines, another 2 lines. Bright, clear, even. There could be no doubt. She was indeed pregnant. It happened exactly when she had finally let go and resigned herself to the idea of not having children. That day, Mary couldn't work. She wrote a leave request, citing indisposition. She needed to go home urgently to tell her husband such amazing news. Mary was riding the bus and thinking, why is it crawling so slowly? It seemed the whole world was conspiring against her. Finally, she reached home. Entering the apartment, she took out the pregnancy test. With a smile, she walked into the living room, clutching the test in her hand, and froze. On their new sofa, covered with a blanket, sat an unfamiliar girl. And Rob was hastily pulling up his trousers. His face was crimson, angry, and bewildered. He clearly hadn't expected his wife to catch him in such a delicate situation. "What's going on here?" Mary barely managed to whisper. "Nothing terrible is happening," Rob replied in a muffled voice. The girl just blinked silently. She had turned pale with fear. Who knew what her lover's wife might get into her head? What if she decided to drag her by the hair? Mary continued to clutch the pregnancy test in her hand. She realized that at that moment, her fate had taken a sharp turn. Mary felt as if the ground had disappeared from under her feet. It became hard to breathe. Nausea rose. Rob took her by the elbow and led her to the kitchen. Turning around, he quietly told the girl, "Get dressed quickly." Mary mechanically walked into the kitchen and stopped, looking at the bottle of wine and 2 glasses on the table. "Why are you home so early?" her husband asked in a displeased tone. Mary gave him a bewildered look. "I wasn't feeling well. I was nauseous, and I took a day off," she stammered. Rob grunted and ruffled his hair. "You could have called and warned me you were coming home." Mary frowned. "I have to call and warn you that I'm coming to my own house? Why? So you can hustle your mistress out? Are you in your right mind? What's going on, Rob? What's wrong? Do you not love me anymore?" Rob avoided looking her in the eyes. "No, I just relaxed a little. And don't you dare raise your voice at me. Don't embarrass yourself." Rob peered into the hallway. The front door slammed. The mistress was gone. "Rob, not embarrass myself in front of whom? In front of your mistress? I can scream as much as I want. You have no right to shut me up." Rob flared up. "You know, I think I'll leave for now. I'll come back when you've calmed down. You've made a scene over nothing. So what if I've strayed a couple of times? So what? I'm not leaving you, I live with you. That means everything suits me, and there's nothing more to discuss. That's it, I'm leaving. We'll talk later when you can handle things calmly. And while I'm gone, think about your behavior. Maybe you'll realize what you're doing wrong, since I had to get a mistress. And she, by the way, doesn't throw tantrums because I have a wife, although she could. She just enjoys herself. I advise you to think about that." And Rob left. A couple of minutes later, the front door slammed. Mary stood in the kitchen, not moving. She clenched her fists. She felt something digging into her left hand. It was the pregnancy test. It was still clenched in her palm. And Rob hadn't even asked what it was. He hadn't even noticed it. Mary cried. Half an hour later, Mary decided she no longer wanted to live with her husband. He had betrayed her, and it seemed she wasn't as needed by him as she wanted to believe. Mary couldn't stay home any longer and went to the hospital. Annie was there. Maybe she could comfort Mary somehow. Annie immediately understood from Mary's appearance that something was wrong. "Mary, why are you back? You weren't feeling well. What happened?" Annie asked. Mary couldn't hold back and burst into tears again. She told her friend everything. Annie listened attentively, then sighed heavily. "Well, friend, you've had quite a day. getting the most wonderful and the most terrible news at the same time is no joke. It seems your husband doesn't really need a child. Maybe you'll have an abortion." Mary shook her head negatively. "What are you saying? No, no, I would never do that. I wanted a child so much and I won't give him up. He's my miracle. I'm going to file for divorce. I've already decided. I just need to leave Rob. I need to move into my own apartment. How to do that, I don't know. If I go back home, he'll either start persuading or arguing. I'm pregnant. I won't withstand his pressure. He might convince me to stay, and I don't want to. I can't live with him after everything he's done." Mary covered her face with her hands and cried. Annie thought, biting her lips and closing her eyes. Then she perked up. "Listen, let me help you. Or rather, not me, but Danny. It's simple." Danny was Annie's brother, a good guy, cheerful, sociable. He had divorced a few years ago. His wife had cheated on him, and Dan found out about it. When Mary met him, Dan was just getting over his divorce. She saw him often. He constantly visited his sister, and Mary enjoyed talking to him. He was so smart, so courteous. One day Annie told her, "Listen, I think Danny has his eye on you. He comes to the hospital way too often for no reason, as if he wants to see you." "Don't be silly, Annie. What nonsense. I'm married. He's not looking at me like that. You just think so," Mary replied. Now Mary thought that Dan was the only one who could help her. Tomorrow her husband would be at work from morning till night. Mary and Annie had a day off. Maybe it was a good idea. They could manage to pack and move things to Mary's apartment. It was good that she hadn't rented it out after the last tenants. How everything was falling into place. Mary agreed. Annie called her brother, and they arranged everything. Mary went to stay at Annie's place when their shift ended. Her husband called her all evening and night, but Mary didn't answer. The next day, Dan was at his sister's place by 7 in the morning. "Are you crazy? Why did you show up so early? I'm not even up yet." But Mary was already awake. While Annie went back to sleep for another half hour, Mary made breakfast for Dan and fed him. She didn't tell Dan anything about her problems with her husband, but judging by his face, he really wanted to know the details. However, he didn't ask questions. He just told her, "Mary, you can always count on my support. I'm very sorry that you're unhappy and your husband is a jerk. I would move mountains for a woman like you, but I would do it in a way that made her the happiest woman in the world. I would never trade you for any other woman." Mary just nodded, but she felt warm and good inside from such touching words. Mary noticed that when she accidentally touched his hand while handing him a plate of pancakes, his hand trembled. Was Annie telling the truth? And Dan really liked Mary? Oh, what thoughts! They moved Mary's things to her apartment, and Mary immediately felt better. Annie was in a hurry. She had a date with another suitor, and she left, leaving Dan and Mary alone. "You can go too. I'll manage myself. Thank you very much," Mary said. But Dan just rolled up his sleeves and replied, "I'm not leaving until we finish everything. You shouldn't lift heavy things. I'll help you." So Annie had told Dan about the pregnancy. Well, everyone would find out anyway. Together they finished quickly. Dan helped her a lot. He carefully offered her a hand when she got on and off a chair. He moved all the furniture so Mary could wash the floors. He fixed her toilet and washed the windows where Mary couldn't reach. Mary looked at him and thought, why wasn't Rob like this? He never helped his wife the way a complete stranger helped her. When they finished, Mary said, "Thank you, Danny. You're a very good man. Your future chosen one will be lucky. I wish I had a husband exactly like you." Dan smiled. "So what's stopping you? I personally don't mind. Finalize the papers with your husband quickly, and I'll propose to you. Will you marry me, Mary?" Mary was speechless. What kind of joke was this? She didn't know what to say, so she decided to play along. Dan, I'm very flattered. However, it's impossible. I'm pregnant with another man's child. What man would want to raise someone else's child? And I'm not going to get rid of him. So I'm sorry, but I can't. Dan said seriously, but I'm not just any man, Mary. I'll treat your child as my own. Don't compare me to others. I've admired you for so long. And now that you're leaving your husband, nothing will stop me from winning you over. You won't get rid of me that easily now. I'll go, but I'll come back tomorrow. You need your wardrobe fixed. I'll be back with tools. And he left. And Mary sat in the kitchen for a long time, not believing her ears. Mary stepped out onto the building steps, squinting in the bright sun. In her hands was a huge bouquet of flowers. Next to her stood her husband. Danny held the baby in his arms and beamed with a smile. And Mary smiled too. Annie ran up to her with her suitor, who would soon become her husband. Finally, Annie had found her happiness too. Annie shrieked, looking at Mary and her son. "Oh, what a cutie! My God, he's so handsome!" Mary didn't reply. She just savored the moment. Who knew that by divorcing Rob, she would find true happiness? She married Annie's brother. He carried Mary in his arms, doted on her, and he accepted the child as his own. He's our son, my Mary. He's my son. I won't give either of you up, remember that, he told her, stroking her belly in the last month of pregnancy. Mary was happy. She didn't think about her ex-husband, just as he didn't think about her. His fate didn't interest her. Only one thing was important to her: her new family, her beloved, precious husband Danny, and their little son Leo. There is true love in this world. Now Mary knew that for sure.